Which countries had the greatest number of casualties in 2007?
The country with the most casualties in 2007 was Colombia, and Colombia has been the #1 casualty country for quite a few years now. It was followed by Afghanistan, Myanmar, Burma, Cambodia, Pakistan, Iraq, Chad, India, Lebanon, Vietnam, and Nepal. In quite a few of these countries, there was actually an increase in casualties compared to the previous years, most notably in Chad and in Iraq. On the plus side, the top two we have for 2007, Colombia and Afghanistan, both saw fewer casualties than before.
How many mine and ERW survivors are currently living worldwide?
We haven't been able to update our total estimate of the number of survivors. There are all over the world. That's mainly because there's not enough casualty data. There's so many countries that have inadequate, incomplete figures, but we still believe there's around 500,000, so 500,000 survivors all over the world.
What are the difficulties with regards to providing precise casualty and survivor numbers?
Some of the main challenges in casualty data collection are that often not enough detail on the actual casualties has been recorded. Like, it can be very simple, the age or the gender of a person, or the activity that person was doing at the time of the incident. Obviously, a lot of countries don't have nationwide coverage, which means that if they don't have data collectors in a certain very mine-affected area, we will just not know the casualties. Other countries just don't have a casualty data collection, so we have to rely on reports from the media, from hospitals, from small NGOs, which give us some sense, but they're very incomplete. Of course, also, media reporting is not very accurate when it comes to describing the device that caused the incident, circumstances, so on and so forth. So there's still a lot to improve there.
Can you explain what the VA-26 is?
In 2004, at the Nairobi summit, the states decided there was a special group of countries which had significant numbers of survivors they were responsible for, but these countries also had significant needs and needed some help in getting proper assistance to survivors. By now, by 2008, this number of countries is 26. It, for example, includes Afghanistan, Cambodia, Uganda, and most recently Iraq and Jordan. These countries are basically asked to make a plan to deal with victim assistance. This plan has to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound so that survivors can get the assistance they need as soon as possible.
What are the components that make up victim assistance? That is, the assistance provided by states and organizations to survivors of mines and ERW.
Victim assistance is actually quite a large concept. It's more than just medical care. Of course, victim assistance starts with emergency medical care, first aid, and then goes to more complex procedures such as surgery. But survivors also need physical rehabilitation. This can be pain management, or if somebody lost an arm or a leg, to receive a prosthetic device. What's often overlooked is that survivors need more than just physical things, but they also need psychological support and social reintegration, because obviously having a landmine or an incident with an explosive remnant of war is very traumatic, and it can cause a person to be isolated, not want to take part in society. So one of the ways of dealing with this is that there are self-help groups or peer support groups, but of course formal psychological counseling, sports activities, involvement in cultural activities is very important. But what most survivors actually want most is to be able to work again, to be productive members of society. That's why economic reintegration in the form of normal, inclusive and exclusive education, vocational training, job opportunities, microcredits, so on and so forth is very important. And then, of course, the last component of victim assistance are laws and public policies, because victim assistance is more than just a medical issue. It's also a human rights issue in which survivors need to have equal rights to everybody else, and where planning for disability services and coordination of services is very important.
How many people received risk education in 2007, warning them about the dangers of mines and explosive remnants of war?
In 2007, there was actually an incredibly high number of people that received risk education. There was about 8.4 million people who received direct risk education, which means risk education that wasn't conducted by broadcast ads on the radio or television. This is a lot more than 2006, when about 7.3 million people received risk education.
In which countries did risk education take place in 2007?
In the states parties, there was 42 states parties where there was risk education, and there was 9 states non-party where risk education took place, so 61 in total. RE was actually deemed inadequate in quite a lot of countries, actually more than where there was adequate RE. So we found that risk education was adequate in 27 states or areas, and inadequate RE was recorded in 38 countries, which is more than in 2006 actually. Adequate for us means that a program was capable of providing messages that are appropriate for the country. So, for example, that you don't talk about landmines if your problem is with explosive remnants of war, that it's targeted at the groups that are at most risks. For example, if this group is boys shepherds, it's not very useful usually to target girls in schools, and that's conducted in all areas where there is a known risk of mines and ERW. And of course, as we see so many conflicts going on these days, it's crucial that the RE program is able to respond to new situations, to emergency situations. Inadequate risk education can have an impact on casualties, especially in conflict situations. Our top 5, or some of the countries in our top 10 of casualties were deemed to be having inadequate risk education. That mainly meant that there was hardly any risk education, so that people just didn't know about the risks and don't have any means of getting information about the risks by mines. For example, Myanmar would be a very good example of that. On the other side, you have Iraq, where there's a lot of risk education, but there's newer problems. For example, in the northern part of Iraq, the problem isn't so much landmines anymore, but it's tampering with unexploded ordnance, something that didn't happen before or happened less frequently before, and to which no risk education messages have been developed yet. So in that sense, inadequate risk education can lead to higher casualties.
What are the major upcoming challenges with regards to casualties, risk education, and victim assistance?
The last 5 years, the governments have spent a lot of time planning and coordinating their victim assistance activities, but in terms of the difference it made to the lives of people, we are not quite sure if the situation of survivors now is better than it was 5 years ago. So for the next 5 years, I think the focus of the government should firmly be on implementing all their plans and putting their coordination to action.